This is Avery Frazier, bike fitter, right?
Yes,
at the
biomechanics technician. Yeah.
Excellent. Get the right name right. At the Boulder Center for Sports Medicine. Tell us what we're going to do, Avery.
So the way that today's going to work is we want to see the position as you came in. So to explain away any of the aches and pains that you have on your bike currently. So spend a little bit of time measuring up the bike as it is right now. Then we want the end product, the bike fit, to look like you rather than you to accommodate to some norm that doesn't really exist. So we'll spend a little bit of time going over general strength and flexibility, see what limitations that we need to work with on the bike, and then we'll go through and make all the changes that we need to for today.
Fantastic. Now I see you've set my bike up on a trainer.
This is our measurement sheet,
right? And
so I'll be filling this in with everything, how it's set up right now.
Okay, so mapping that to here.
Correct.
It looks like a Bike Friday fit form. That's what we do. Have you had any experience with Bike Fridays at all?
No, actually, this would be my first Bike Friday fit.
Exciting.
Yes.
Are you expecting to be any different in any way, or does it look like a regular bike to you?
No, well, actually it probably has, perhaps more adjustability in some ways and more constraints in others. Not being able to change the stem position is different.
Bike Friday actually sell these bikes with a fit stem, which lets you move it up, down, backwards and forwards until you get it right. I guess for this sort of thing we should have brought one of those.
Sure, that would have been ideal.
Right now you're measuring, what's that measurement?
Seat height.
And it goes from the center of the crank,
from the center of the bottom bracket to the top of the saddle.
The very top of the saddle.
You're at 60.25 centimeters.
I guess if you have a cushy saddle, you have to give or take a couple of millimeters, do you?
All these measurements are saddle dependent, so if you change the saddle, these measurements will change as well.
Oh, okay.
This is the horizontal distance between the tip of the saddle and the center of the bottom bracket. So you're 4.5 centimeters back.
Yes, we saw some statistics, probably Google, that said the average height of the American woman is not Cindy Crawford height at all.
No, it's not.
Or whatever Gap or any of these other people think.
Right,
but actually something around 5'4".
That sounds about right. This is the drop, so we want to see the vertical distance between the top of your saddle and your handlebars. So in this case, your bars are a little bit higher than your saddle. By about 1.5 centimeters.
Now, Bike Fridays typically have this as a fixed thing. When you fold the bike, the saddle doesn't move down. The idea being it's important to keep that height.
Of course. Or appropriately mark your seat post so you can replicate it.
But has anybody invented a way to mark this thing reliably? Because Sharpies rub off.
Yes.
Tape is annoying. It just looks ugly. But we haven't worked it out. No one has.
I would also mark the angle and the height of the stem, but we don't have a traditional stem.
Now, if Bike Fit's got really popular here, what we'd probably do is leave a fit stem here at the centre so that any Bike Friday person that came in could actually pop it on.
Of course, that would be ideal.
Right.
38 centimeters wide.
Now this is actually called a petite model, where they've actually tried to do things like use the shimmed, shifters to close distance, everything thinner and lighter, and of course small wheels enable much smaller people.
Yes, 155 millimeter cranks, so it's very small crank arm.
It's a 155. In fact, you can actually get them down to 125, we found out, for our dwarf bikes.
So typical is anywhere from 170 to 175. A Terry fly on here.
It's actually a men's fly.
Yeah.
I like it because it sort of seems to flex more in the middle.
More here?
Yeah, it's because longer. Well, they're just basic test ride pedals, really.
Why don't you go ahead and take off your shoes? I want to see how those are set up as well.
Okay. Now Avery is looking at my shoes. This kind of beaten up, specialised body comp, I guess what someone said rather derisively, spinning shoes.
Right. Yes. So we want to first take a look at the position of the cleats.
Yes.
So there is some asymmetry here in how these were set up. This one is set so that your stance width is all the way wide. This one is set in the middle. Fore and aft look symmetrical. You've moved them all the way back, but that asymmetry we'll take a look at if that's necessary or not.
This pull to the back was from Lon Haldeman, who believes you actually got more, lasted longer if you had pressure less over distance, even though it was less efficient. Also, my right leg does turn out naturally.
Okay.
In fact, like this.
Okay.
Which is kind of like why I subconsciously did the other thing, which may or may not be correct.
Okay.
You can see someone over there getting the same deal done, I guess.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, he's doing roughly the same thing. That's Tim, one of our physical therapists. So he's doing a medical fit. Sean's doing one of our 3D bike fits.
The 3D one is where they look at you from all different angles. And I'm just getting the good basic one, aren't I?
Yes, of course.
3D would be for people like maybe Lance, is that right? Or no?
There's no restriction on who you are in order to get a 3D bike fit. It simply just gives us a microscope on your fit. So we can take a closer look as to what's going on while you're riding rather than relying on some of the static measurements that we'll be taking today. The computer will take those measurements dynamically, which is a more accurate way of doing things.
And Avery pointed out my orthotic has a hole in it, and I just assumed that it always had a hole, maybe to hang it up, but it could have just worn right through. And this is another pair of orthotics that I've had for many years. They were way less expensive than those ones. A foot mold was made for the other ones, but they weren't made for these. They're a lot thicker.
Most people think of glute strength as the strong glute max muscle, the big muscle that you can see.
Right.
However, what's really important is some of those smaller muscles like glute medius and tensor fasciae latae that actually control the rotation of your leg. Sports such as running on the road and cycling, they don't necessarily engage or work those rotational muscles, and they can easily get weak if they're neglected. So if you have trouble controlling the rotation, it's easy for the knee to drop in and cause some of the knee problems that could be going on. So without doing specific exercises to really be working those rotator muscles, it'd be very common, very common in most cyclists for them to be weak.
So what typical exercises are really good for glutes or activities?
Some physical therapists would be the best person to ask for that, but some of the simple ones that we prescribe around here are clam exercises and some just general hip abduction exercises. Things that are more off camber would be better, so hiking or running on trails where you have to constantly be controlling that leg more. Things that are more linear, like running on the road that's very predictable, or cycling where you're just moving in one plane. It doesn't kick in those rotators.
So dancing would be fantastic.
Yes. Yeah, dancers have to have very good glute strength.
And swimming. Yeah.
You know, depending on what stroke.
Got it.
You know, I could see a little bit in swimming.
Okay. The porpoise rolling stroke.
Yes.
Well, this is looks like a combination of doctor's cabinet, mechanics cabinet, full of cool stuff, Frankensteinian stuff, and electrodes and whatever.
I don't think he was necessarily referring to your arch as a traditional pes planus foot, but your forefoot here, most people, they have a little bit of what's called forefoot varus, where your foot turns in like this, where your pinky toe would be lower than your big toe when you're standing. However, that forefoot on you is fairly flat, so you don't necessarily need the same support to support the forefoot natural angulation, because yours is naturally flatter.
Is that good or bad?
It's just not necessarily normal. But actually for cycling action, since the pedal is flat and your foot is flat, that would be better. For a lot of people, we have to cant the forefoot, basically bring the pedal up to the foot rather than the foot having to collapse down flat each time. So with you, we probably won't have to do that.
It would seem to me that if I've been cycling for about 10 years, pushing load, do you think perhaps that pressing flattened my foot?
No.
It never works that way?
No. Your knee wants to track inside. It's called a valgus angulation, rather than staying right over your toe. So that would could contribute to some of the chondromalacia, because your kneecap doesn't track quite straight with that. So we'll have to accommodate for that on the bike. So the 1/3 knee bend test that we do simulates the cycling action as closely as possible. When you're putting pressure on, we want to see how you're naturally set up to apply that load through your legs.
Show people what it looks like on me. See? Okay, that's what it looks like, and that shouldn't look like, perhaps. Right? What about the right one now? The left one?
Okay, let's see. Just about the same. Just about the same.
Okay, so that should be straighter.
Yes, we want to see that knee tracking right over the second toe would be ideal, rather than it turning in.
That's what it's doing.
Right, tracking. We want it to track over the second toe. Right now, it's tracking inside the first.
So I'm like a knock-kneed cyclist.
Correct.
The opposite of being a bow-legged cowboy. Is that right?
Exactly. Okay.
Measuring my hamstring length.
Yes.
Okay.
Measuring the angle here between your torso and your leg. So you get to 92 degrees, and that's great flexibility. Okay, exactly the same.